So I want to go over some of the trades that I took today with you guys to get a little bit of to give you guys a little bit of a better understanding of why I'm taking some of the trades that I'm actually taking. So first and foremost, I'm going to show you guys my results. So I did take quite a handful of trades today, and these are 5 different funded accounts that I'm actually trading on, and you guys can see total I made just about $20,000 on these funded accounts. This metrics are a little bit off. The metrics are a little bit off because I made just roughly around $5,000 per account, which is super solid. So as you guys see, these are just 5 funded accounts that I have here, and that's what I paid in commissions today. And also, looking at it over here as well, this is gonna be my TradeZilla on my personal account, how we're starting off November. So you guys can see, I took a total of 3 long positions, 2 losing trades, average R multiple of 3.03 with a profit factor of 4.5. Granted, it's only 1 day out of the month, so I wouldn't really make those statistics stick. I think my win rate will probably drop a little bit, my R multiple go up a little bit more, but I made $28,000 on my personal account, $26,000 after commissions. And I want to go over these trades with you guys here. So this is going to be a 5 range bar chart. It is going to be a price action chart with volume profile, big trades indicator, and then also what I have here on my study as well is the cumulative volume delta. And then I also have here, whenever large orders are placed on either the bid or the ask, the bid meaning that it is going to be buy limit orders, and on the ask meaning that they're going to be sell limit orders. That's why you see these like random lines here. It's because these were large orders of about 500 contracts or more sitting on the order book, just to give you guys an explanation of everything. Then of course we have the cumulative volume delta over here as well at the bottom hand of the actual study. So now I've made a few videos on this before, but really all the cumulative volume delta is, it's basically a much more simpler way to measure who is being more aggressive in the markets, either the buyers being these bullish candlesticks or the sellers being the bearish candlesticks. So really what I use a cumulative volume delta for is to look for divergences inside of the markets. And if you're somebody that you don't trade order flow, it doesn't really matter, if you don't look at footprint charts, if you don't look at the volume profile, big trades indicators, whatever the case might be, is the CVD is going to help you understand whether there's absorption present in the market or whether you're starting to see some form of a divergence in the market, which we'll get into a little bit more depth a little bit later in this video. But first and foremost, the very first trade of the day that I actually took was inside of this range here, trying to look for a short continuation to the downside. Originally, I missed a low volume node continuation setup up here at the 80s, which would have been just a massive setup that would have paid. Now, I did see some red flags that, I kind of ignored with the order flow here, just simply because I was a little bit too married on the sell side, and I wanted to be on the side of aggression, and I wanted to be on the side of strength, and I was looking for a continuation, and I kind of ignored some of the signs here. So I did end up taking a loss and a break-even trade inside of this range here, which I'll break down for you guys in a second here. So first and foremost, when we go into any trading day, after the market has kind of already settled for a little bit, so like the first 15 to 30 minutes of the market have already happened, if there's no setup there, I like to identify who the aggressor is. As you can see, like with not only the big trades indicator, you could see that the sellers were the aggressor on the day. We could look at cumulative volume delta again, which is showing us the difference between the buying at the ask and the selling at the bid. And you can see that sellers are coming into the markets aggressively and hard, and you can see that not only CVD dropping significantly, but the price action is also following the cumulative volume delta, meaning that these sellers are in control and that these sellers are being rewarded for their aggression, meaning that more importantly, the sellers are in control of the session. So at the first sign of any pullback that I see, I wanted to get short, which the first pullback we got was over here into an LVN, which unfortunately I did miss out on this setup over here. Now, this second setup, which again, this is where I could have potentially done better and looked for potential mean reversions, is over here. We can see we have a large aggressive seller that came into the markets for a single order of 100 contracts or more, get filled, and immediately price action reverses. Another large seller came in over here, price action continues to pump, Another large seller came in over here. Price action continues to pump. And now these large sellers and anybody who sold inside of this range are now underwater, and they're going to have to be essentially forced to liquidate their positions. But at the same time, like for me, the invalidation point on the shorts was going to be just around like these 75s here. So when price action ended up pumping up almost into these 75s, we actually ended up coming into this area over here, which I'll look for this on my footprint chart here really quick and go back down into this range to show you guys why I took the first trade of the day where I did, which is going to be right around here. It's going to be in this area. No, it's going to be in this area over here, was because we pushed up into this previous level of support. We pushed up into this structural zone here at 68, 67, which is going to be a technical key level. And we started to see some absorption here, and I ended up pulling the trigger with absorption as soon as I saw aggressive selling step in, and I ended up getting stopped out of that trade almost right away, which is perfectly fine. Again, one thing that I did miss on the heat map and on the DOM was where my entry was, which my entry was roughly around these like 60. No, my entry was roughly around like these 62s over here, roughly around this area. I believe it was like the 60s flat, to be honest, right once we saw that aggressive selling step into the market. What ended up happening was we had about 300 offers then come into the order book, 300 sell limit orders at 67 over here. And you guys can see price pushed up right up into that offer, and that offer got filled. We had a little bit of a push higher up into the 72s to, again, another large offer that also got filled as well. And when I refer to offers, I mean sell limit orders. And as soon as those sell limit orders got filled, we saw aggressive selling start stepping into the markets. And with that aggressive selling, once we started to reclaim back beneath this large delta, and we started to reclaim back beneath the 70s here, I could see that there was large buyers that stepped in, along with a large seller that stepped in at the very high, absorbing all of this buying pressure. That's why I decided to make the decision to go short, because we had a large buyer step in and pushing price up, a large seller stepped in and price immediately reversed back down, and we can see selling start coming back in here on CBD as well. So this was a really solid entry. Wasn't happy with my first entry, was happy with my second entry. Now the thing about it was we also on the large trades indicator on a different chart actually had large sellers start stepping in on this candlestick and on this low over here. Now, as soon as those large sellers started to step in on the markets, my entry was roughly around like these 69s here. The large selling started to step in down here near the 65s and the 64s. I moved my stop loss to break even, which those large sellers then got absorbed by passive buyers on the book. Price reversed, and I got taken out at break even on that trade. Now, the next trade that I ended up taking was a basically breakout of this high that we're looking at here. So in the breakout of this high, I ended up basically just taking a break at the high setup with strength. And why I was looking to buy before I kind of like jumped the gun here was because of the cumulative volume delta. Now, if we look at the cumulative volume delta, what I want you guys to do is look at CVD and then look at price. You can see that they're doing two completely different things. And what that tells me is we have aggressive sellers trying to come into the market to push this market lower. And I was explaining to this on everybody that was inside of the live trading room, and why looking at CBD is also super powerful as well. Is that we had aggressive sellers trying to come into the market to bring this market down. You could see how aggressive these sellers were trying to get here at this high, but price action was just steadily climbing up. So price was doing the complete opposite of what the cumulative volume delta was doing. Now, what that tells me, and what I can also confirm on a heat map as well, is that we have passive buyers sitting in this entire range, absorbing all of this selling pressure. So when this selling pressure dries up and we see aggressive buying step in, we should see a pop and a move to the upside. The probability for price to continue higher at this point is much larger than for price to completely reverse and head back down, because of the absorption that we're seeing inside of this area. So the thing that I was talking about with the live trading room was, now the only problem is, how do we position ourselves in a situation where we can capitalize on a move to the upside? And the very first thing was, well, number one, we could wait for a break out of balance to then look for a pullback back into balance. And if bids or passive buyers continue to defend the market At that pullback, then that's when we can look to long, or two, we could long a breakout with strength. So at that time, the balance range was basically this entire area right around here. This was the entire balanced range. And what that simply means is this is where we were seeing a lot of business being done and a lot of accumulation here from both the buyers and clearly the sellers as well. The only problem is when you're taking trades in the middle of balance, like there's a lot of chop, there's a lot of consolidation, and there's a lot higher of a probability that you can get taken out of a trade and the trade go into your favor because you're taking a trade in a range where you have both buyers and sellers aggressively entering the markets, causing the market to just chop around like this. The lot higher of a probability of a setup would be to buy the market out of strength at a breakout, or to sell the market at a breakout with strength here as well, or to wait for a break out of balance, a pullback into balance, and then if we see the market continue to be defended and we don't see a complete reversion, we could look to long it back up. So I ended up taking the longs as we started to see selling, or as we started to see significant buying pick up here on the CVD, and we started to break out of balance, and I ended up catching a little bit of this move here. So I was targeting the 93s. Why the 93s? Because that was going to be the value area high on the session profile. And this is also where we're going to see a lot of this volume die off. So we could potentially see sellers start stepping back in here at the 93s, which we saw exactly that later on in the day, right? Because there's, again, a low volume node throughout this entire range. So for me, when I actually took these longs here with buying strength and I saw large buying start hitting the tape, really all I did was execute with that large buying. Again, not trading against the strength, but trading with the strength. You'll find you're going to win more of your trades. The only problem is I got filled a little bit later than when I wanted to actually get filled. So really quickly, as price popped up and I saw this large buyer step in, I said, you know what? I'm going to close out one of my positions. I'm going to make back the majority of the loss from this trade here. I'm going to move my stops to break even. And if we don't push right into targets, then we don't push right into targets. But I need to manage my trade more effectively here because I got a later entry than I wanted to. And my risk exposure is a lot greater now. So I don't want to be in the trade at that point if we pull all the way back down. And then I could just look for a re-entry worst case scenario. And I ended up getting stopped at break even on that position, leaving me just slightly in the red on the day. I then took a break. I went out for a walk. I ended the live, and I told everybody in the live room and in the Discord here that keep an eye out keep an eye out for this level. This is what the balance range looked like here at that point in time. We just pulled back into value. If the buyers defend, we can see new highs, which price pulled all the way back into the value area here. And what I saw originally, and I could even go down to like a different chart over here as well. What I saw originally was we see large aggressive selling step into this area here. And what I'm also going to do as well. So this chart looks a little bit hectic here, but just bear with me. This area is the same as this area over here. So I want you guys to pay attention to, or close attention to this. So we've pulled back into our balanced range. And what I'm seeing here is large orders loading on the order book. You can see that there's a large offer, meaning a large passive seller that loaded on the order book, and lots of large aggressive selling as we're reclaiming back into balance. We see a buyer here. Large selling reclaimed back into balance, and what we see here is a large buyer and a large passive buyer here as well that got filled, a large bid that got filled here on the order book. Immediately after that, we see aggressive buying come into the markets. We're seeing CVD start to push as well, and then we reclaim above this entire area. For me, I wanted to get long as soon as we could reclaim above where these large sellers stepped into the markets. Why? Because these large sellers would then be underwater and they would have to force, and they would actually have to liquidate their positions to be able to not take such a huge loss. And what that can end up, and what can end up happening there is now more buyers start stepping into the markets and it could cause a squeeze to the upside. So as soon as price started to reclaim this area, I waited for a little bit of a pullback. You can see a large seller came in here, price pumped back down. A large seller came in here as well. Price started to then reject after that large seller came in. That's when I actually took my long positions. It wasn't like the perfect entry, but it was a really good entry. I took my long positions with my stop loss just slightly under where this large buyer was. I didn't need to put my stops under the low. And that's just simply because if price were to have came all the way back down to here, then these sellers would be back in profit. These sellers would be getting paid here. And I'd rather just close in and wait for another re-entry. And then at that point, I would have a lot better positioning and a lot better R multiple here. So as soon as we started to basically reclaim back above where this blue line was, that's what pulled the trigger for me to take a long position. And then shortly after that, you guys can see new candle opened up, large seller came in. Again, no reward for that selling, new candle came up. CVD started to push here as well. And then on top of that, we actually saw a large buyer come in and price ran all the way to the very first target, which the very first target was the high of essentially like this entire range here, which is going to be the 89s. And I ended up closing it right then and there. I didn't hold to the 93s, which I'm glad I didn't hold through the 93s, because again, this is going to be a 5 range bar chart. So price consolidated in this area for a little bit here, and it's decided to close the position and call it a day. But if you guys want to trade live with me every single day, you guys can click that very first link down in the description. And of course, there will be more content to come on my trade breakdowns. I'll see you guys in the next video.